How important do you think it's to become this rock star in context of real estate market? Charismatic, energetic. Just talk to me about that kind of component.
I think it's super important. Whatever industry you're in at the moment, it's all about personal brand. I have been building my personal brand back from when I was an actor. People would meet me and be like, oh my gosh, that was fantastic. And I'm like, thank you so much. Make sure you're following me on Instagram.
If you were a first-time buyer, what area would you buy in?
I bought a property in an area that I didn't know that area at all.
Okay, this developer is asking to collaborate on this. What do you determine your pricing around? What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Real Ones. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Sian-Louise. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
It feels like deja vu, I'm so happy to sit down with you for the very first time. And no, but I have to say, you've been one of the kindest people that I've met in the UK real estate market. And not because you came on this podcast, but because you agreed to have fried chicken with me about 4 months or 5 months ago. And we were in your favorite part of London, Battersea. And you were just like, yeah, we should have fried chicken. Like while we, you responded to my cold message, we met up. And then you were like, fried chicken, bring it out. That's what it's all about.
I love that you're used to this glamorous Dubai lifestyle, and I bring you truly to South London and I give you fried chicken.
Trust me, we love our fried chicken in Dubai too. There's a place called Hashmi, shout out. And you need to go there. It's like a Kenyan Indian kind of mix. When you come, which I hope you will at some point.
Yeah.
I'll get you from the airport, but you have to try Hashmi's. It's like the vibe.
I'm holding you to that.
You got it. So today we're obviously here to talk about real estate and, the UK real estate market. But I want to, before getting into all of that, I want to ask you what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old.
So when I was 7, the plan was to be a performer.
Okay.
I spent my whole childhood doing dancing lessons, training as a dancer. Oh. And so at 7 years old, I wanted to be front row and center on a stage.
Wow. Yeah. And you are kind of front and center now on Instagram. So you're like,
that's the interesting thing is how much my history, though it's, my background and my foundation was in performing arts, how much that's actually used so much in my day-to-day now. Yeah. And so many agents I meet who are really successful agents, a lot of the time actually have a history in performing arts because you just end up merging the two now.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting, right? So you go from being this, you want to become a performer, and then how does this real estate thing happen, all of a sudden? Because I know that you did take this quite seriously, and from what I understand, you were also on a show that was actually, being it's a theater kind of show, right?
Yeah.
So that is pretty serious. It's not like, oh, I wanted to be an actor, so I looked into the mirror and then recited my monologue and then never saw it again. It's serious what you've done. So how did that shift even happen?
So I actually managed to have quite a good career in a short space of time.
Yeah.
When I was training, I went to train full time. And unfortunately, I had injuries that meant that I couldn't dance anymore. So that kind of evolved into me falling into this straight acting space. Yeah. And I went into this show, which then was picked up. It started as an off West End show in a small little theatre. And it then got to a bigger theatre. It ended up sort of progressing for about 3 years, which is quite unknown for these smaller shows to have that kind of an influence.
Yeah.
And it was when I came out of that and I was in between other roles that I literally fell into real estate. I wanted to buy a property and my experience at that time with the agent was horrendous.
Okay.
I was a first-time buyer, didn't have a clue. And I was buying something that was a probate. It was in a really bad way. It was a full project. So I felt like I needed a bit more support in that time. And I also was like, if this is the competition out there, I can do this job and I can do it a whole lot better, which is how I eventually fell into real estate.
Right. Yeah. And we'll get into that in a second, but you just sort of sparked a thought in my head. There's a lot of first-time home buyers out there It's very hard to be one because it's extremely tall order to put down that huge down payment and things like that. Maybe in the UK they have like incentive schemes and things like that. In Dubai we still have about a 20% down payment kind of thing. It's just pretty standard across the board. The rest of it goes to like the mortgage and things like that. So what would your advice to a first-time homebuyer be on picking the right agent for you?
That's actually really difficult, right? Because the type of agent that I as a first-time buyer would have liked to have dealt with is probably someone like myself, right? Who at this stage of my career, I care more about the person and the person's journey than the money that it's going to make me.
Yeah.
The money will always come when you look after people correctly, right? And you know, your typical first-time buyer, especially in the UK with everything that's gone on, you know, cost of living, how much everything has gone up in terms of pricing here, it's probably less affordable now to be buying something, you know, more expensive as your first property, right? So at that caliber that you're probably looking to buy in, your realm is probably mainly the high street agents that will be your first interaction with agents. And, you know, high street agents are why most real estate agents have a horrendous reputation, because they're all about just calling through hundreds of people until they're going to get a sale, and they do whatever they do to get the deal over the line, which quite frankly is why I became an agent, because I didn't like being dealt with in that way. So I would choose someone who is personable. I would choose someone who doesn't give you that impression that you're just a quick buck for them. But in that caliber, it's harder to find that type of agent.
Yeah. So that makes sense. And like also, if you were a first-time buyer, what area would you buy in? Don't say Battersea. That's not cool. I know you would say that, but still, yeah.
I would like you to buy in Battersea.
Please.
But the first property I bought was actually out in Kent.
Okay.
And I bought a property in an area that sounds crazy, but I didn't know that area at all until I bought real estate there. And the reason I bought there was because the commuting time was really short. It was a very affordable town. And actually I owned that property for 2 years and I managed to make quite a good amount of profit on it in that time. So I would buy in an area that hasn't yet blown pricing wise, but has the potential to, because of its access into a town or into a city.
Right.
I'd probably recommend those Kent areas, or I'd look up further towards like Manchester and everywhere. There's a boom up in Manchester at the moment. Look to towns where there's students, there's universities, you know, it depends what you're looking to buy. But if you're looking to buy something that you can get profit from or you can rent, then towns where there's universities will always be able to generate you a good income.
Right. And that's very interesting. So it kind of depends on the purpose of your investment. I think a lot of first-time buyers probably just trying to live somewhere and like commute to work, maybe a little bit longer commute to work. I also noticed you switched up your accent to more Manchester when you said
Did
Manchester.
I
don't know. Manchester.
Did I?
I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into that too much. But anyways,
there's not a different accent in there.
No. So okay, you've obviously worked at the big corporates.
Yes.
You've explored sort of building your own book throughout as well. Talk to me about kind of where you land on the whole estate agency versus brokerage kind of model.
It's really interesting because I think that things in the UK over the next sort of 5-year trajectory are going to change astronomically. Historically, it was always, you would join a high street agent and then you'd end up going to a larger corporate and that was kind of your journey in real estate. Yeah. But now this self-employed broker and these brokerages are popping up and have been around for a few years. Yeah. And you tend to find that the big talent in these bigger corporates are now leaving to go and work at these bigger brokerages. So when you find people that you look up to massively within the real estate industry, all going and choosing that method rather than the typical method, I think there's going to be a big change that will come.
Is that just because like they want to keep more of the split, I guess, and like they're like, we don't really need all of this extra support that's now coming in, like, because that's why estate agencies, I think, take up more of the percentage, right? Because they're like, oh, we're providing you with a fixed salary or something like that per year, plus we offer some sort of legal compliance, whatever kind of support, and therefore we justify this percentage. Plus we give you kind of leads as well in a way. Whereas a lot of the senior ones are attracting that volume regardless of who's providing it. So they're like, let me keep more of the pie that I've got. So is that kind of the rationale then?
Yeah, because you get to a certain stage in your career where the client just follows you. It doesn't matter who you work for.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the name that's over the door that you go into each day. Yeah. It's, you know, Sian-Louise, wherever you're working, whoever you're with, I'm going to be with you. And you know, I had this situation a few weeks ago when I was still working at that bigger corporate that I've just left. And I had this tenant that I had placed in a property 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
They'd looked me up on Google. They'd seen what office I was working in. They called the offices and they said, can we speak to Sian-Louise? They said their name. I was like, oh my gosh, how are you? What's this? What's that? They said, yeah, you know, our son's now looking for somewhere to rent. You were the best real estate agent that we worked with. Can you please help us and help him on his journey? Yeah. We literally Googled you, found out where you were working, and we only want to deal with you. So they didn't come because of the company I was working with. They didn't come because of social media. They didn't come for anything else other than they had a good experience. Yeah. And that's what you tend to find when you get to this stage. So yeah, you attract your clients and then, you know, they'll follow you wherever you go. But that versus the larger corporates, I think, you know, people's eyes are starting to open, especially with everything that's, you know, being exposed with shows like Netflix and things like that, that there is so much more of a pie that you can have as an individual. Yeah. Why are you giving so much of this away to the big corporate when 9 times out of 10 you're the person doing all of the work behind the scenes? Yeah. So yeah, I think there'll be a huge shift. How important do you think it's kind of becoming to become this rock star? You know, in like the context of real estate market, because in Dubai there's a high social media sort of penetration. In the UK it's starting to get there, and there's some pioneers obviously that we know very well that are doing that. But is it almost then that if you're not a rock star, you're probably not going to be seen? Or just talk to me about like that kind of component, the charismatic, energetic. Welcome to 258 Park Avenue. I have no idea, but you know, giving out people's addresses.
Oh my God, I have no idea. Like, you know, you would be surprised how many brokerages have offered me a job right now. Like it's insane. So I have a lot of exit opportunities should everything crash and burn.
Do you want to do a switch?
Oh hell no, hell no. Technology, let's go. This is a real estate. You know, I'm here to empower and
I was going to say, yeah.
That's what I'm here to do.
You're meant to be helping us, not becoming our competition.
Exactly, yeah. But you know, it's funny that you say that because there's a lot of real estate technology companies that are now taking on the role of a brokerage as well. Like they will initially start with, let's say, mortgage brokering or something like that. Then all of a sudden they launch a brokerage, and then all of the brokerages are like, wait, what? Like, you were supposed to be our friend, which is why we kind of gave you access to our data. Yeah. And then now you're launching a brokerage. I fully believe that every real estate technology company that commits to a brokerage of providing them like technology services should be fine saying we will never, ever, ever in the life cycle of our company launch a real estate brokerage, leveraging all the data that you've sort of given us. But yeah, going back to the whole point of being a rock star. You are a rock star. How does one become a rock star? And is it important to be one?
I think it's super important, right? Yeah. Everything, you know, whatever industry you're in at the moment, it's all about personal brand. And I have been building my personal brand back from when I was an actor. I would come out from a show and people would, you know, meet me and be like, oh my gosh, that was, you know, fantastic. And I'm like, thank you so much. Make sure you're following me on Instagram.
Small plug in there, yeah.
Thank you so much. And we connected on Facebook, right? Yeah. So I've just always been really aware of connecting with people in that way. Because, you know, you never know what bit of content you'll put out that will blow and put your face out there, and then open so many more doors to you, right? I had a video that I didn't even know if I was going to do this, by the way. I was standing in a listing that I have. I've actually taken you to that listing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I just did a video and I sent it quickly to the client and said, "You happy for me to post this?" "Yeah, more than happy for you to post it." That's now on 1.2 million views, right?
Wow.
And that particular video, for the next, however many weeks after, for the however many appointments I was going and meeting someone who lived in Battersea Power Station. That video was in Battersea Power Station. And they said, "Oh, I've already seen you on my Explore page. Oh, I've already seen you on my feed. I love that video. I love the marketing that you do." So if we have this, access to these clients, and we have access to doing this just from our phone by taking quick video, why on earth as an agent would you not be leveraging, access to the world? You don't know how far these things can go.
100%. I'm sure those 1.2 million weren't just UK, probably international as well.
Yeah.
So it's about selling that particular unit, and at the same time also about showing other people, this is what I can bring you. It's reach and influence, and that's really important in having a very quick, seamless sort of selling kind of process as well.
Yeah.
So you're one of the few agents in the UK that have gone viral ever, and that's a big feat. Did you did you feel any different after that? No.
Yeah, I actually find that really exciting.
Yeah.
I love the fact that real estate agents in the UK aren't leveraging social media enough, because for someone like myself, I'm like, well, that's great, because the sky's the limit, because there isn't really, yes, there's people with hundreds of thousands of followers, literally 2 people with hundreds of thousands of followers. Hundreds of thousands isn't in the millions, right? I'm like, the sky's the limit with where we can take this in the UK. And I really want to be one of those agents who ends up being at the top.
Yeah, and I think it's like, whenever you think real estate, you should think Sian-Louise, right?
There we go.
That's kind of like she's gonna cut that out and use endorsement.
Yeah.
Let's go. So talk to me about sort of, if I was an agent today, starting off with 0 following, right? And I know that personal brand is important. I know that social media is important. What would your top 3 tips be to that agent to get started?
It depends on what avenue you want to go down, right? So you need to be aware of the audience that you want to attract. If you want to be attracting, a higher caliber of clientele, then you need to make sure that what you're putting out there actually matches with the clientele that you're trying to attract. But I was speaking at a panel a couple of weeks ago on social media, and it was literally a panel about social media in the real estate industry, which I find really interesting, because I'm like, oh, okay, that's now, those conversations are now happening, which is good. My advice was just get going. Stop procrastinating. Stop worrying about, shall I post this, shall I not? You'll never actually know what works until you start to post and then get the feedback from your followers. And that's the only thing that's going to help you to continue to grow when you actually start. So many people start, just start, be consistent, have a goal in mind with what you want to achieve and what you want to put out there, and get going.
So before all the sort of glitz and glam that came from this, consistent posting, knowing who you're targeting and things like that, I'm guessing it wasn't always shiny and glitz and glam. I mean, for you, obviously, you had the whole actor situation, all that kind of stuff. So maybe it was, I don't know. But, I'll tell you, honestly speaking, when you have this kind of podcast set up, you usually find yourself in a situation where the guest, if they're not willing to sort of share about themselves, I keep it relatively short, right? Because I'm I've heard the story before. So you care about money. Surprise, surprise, right? But when I had, for instance, Daniel on, and he was just and I was just shout out to Lux, because he brought that question up. He was just what's the lowest point that you've had sort of in your life that kind of you came out of, and what you kind of learned from it? And I'm going to ask you the same question, because I have a feeling that you have an answer. No.
So This is like absolute sidewalk.
That's
from
what
where
I
we
was saying.
were.
I'm
Like-
all about that Uno reverse card. Let's go.
So I'm actually a single parent.
Okay.
And I had my little one just before lockdown.
Yeah.
So I had this new baby. I ended up having an emergency C-section after a horrendous, like very traumatic labor. And so physically, like my body was in a really bad way, but things were bad. You know, I was living by myself. I had a baby who I didn't know how to look after. I was physically, like not physically even, shouldn't even be picking her up at that point by myself. You know, my money was running out because I was only getting 6 weeks maternity pay. Thank you to who I was working for at that time. Wow. So, you know, things get real pretty quickly in those types of situations.
You know, it's like, you know, this story is like so powerful because, like, you know, there's so many, in general, even without a circumstance as tough as yours, it's so hard. Like when I compare the Dubai and London real estate market, to see women in the sort of brokerage space killing it at the top of their game kind of a thing, just because the opportunities for it are fewer because of what you just said, the 6 weeks maternity pay kind of a thing, and the cost to kind of raise a child in both kind of countries are so different. And like you could get support and things like that in Dubai, which is why you see a lot of brokerage owners that are women in the country. Like, you know, there's in the UAE, like there's so many of them compared to the UK, 100%. And I was talking to someone else about that today. I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is like because I was trying to get guests for the podcast, obviously. I was like, why aren't there more women? Right. And I was just like, and that's when it kind of hit me that, you know, these are the kind of challenges that women in the industry face that I feel like corporates, not corporates, like nobody's like really addressing in a meaningful way.
But they address it like on the surface, right?
Yeah.
They address it because having a working mum work at their corporate is a tick box exercise. But the reality is, you know, if I was still in a corporate space, my daughter's going to start school in September. And if I was still working at a corporate, how am I dropping her off to school and how am I picking her up at the time that she finishes school?
Yeah.
It can't happen, right? So yes, you know, well done, you've hired a mother, but how do you actually assist that mother in her day-to-day dealings?
Yeah.
And I think it's so hard for us as women because at the time where, you know, our career trajectory is onto its absolute peak is at the time where we're most fertile, right? Yeah. So what do? Do you have your child when you are at your fertile time in your life? Or do you continue to then progress your career and then risk it and try and have a child later? And that's why you find so many women, especially, you know, my generation in the UK at the moment, are having their children so much later, but then they're having to pay tens of thousands in IVF, or they're freezing their eggs, or they're doing whatever they're doing to try and make sure that they actually get that child.
Yeah.
You know, I was really lucky that when I returned to work, because it was lockdown, and because I was working for a smaller independent at the time, although I didn't have a good maternity pay, what they did offer me was that I could return to work with my daughter, right? Wow. So I actually trialed a working mum role where I was a broker, but an employed broker. And I would bring my child with me. Right? Yeah. So I'm pitching for business with my daughter.
So you're splitting commission with her.
honestly, yeah. Every time we would sell a property and she was on the viewing with me, I would pay commission into her savings account.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so cute.
She's actually earning commission.
So I'm gonna flip the script on you, right? Let me put you in the position of a brokerage owner. And, you know, let's say you've got, you know, a brokerage that's bringing in sufficient cash and like, let's say we're in a good position. If you were to bring on women into the workforce, into your team and mothers especially, what would you do differently?
I think there's things as a mother that I value so much greater. So for instance, my own brokerage, if that is to be the case, I would make sure that that mother has private healthcare insurance for her and her children. Yeah. Things like that. I think in terms of a brokerage setup, it's fairly free anyway. You know, you have maybe a meeting once or twice a week in the morning, and then your week is kind of determined by you. So I would leave that to whoever it is, the brokers, to work in their own means. Yeah. And then, we just schedule those meetings that the whole team are coming together around a time that everyone can actually do after their drop-offs.
Okay, that's very, very interesting, right?
Very simple.
I don't know. I feel like it seems to be they should be able to do this, but they're not, which is.
But
like, I
that's a
don't get it.
brokerage, right?
Yeah.
Because running a big corporate
Yeah.
and having mothers working in a bigger corporate is different. Because, for instance, I'd be called into meetings at 5 p.m. in my head office, but my nursery pickup is 5 minutes from my office, which isn't near my head office.
Yeah.
Not long after that. So it's, how are you going to schedule the day to make sure that people can work and can accommodate their home life around their working life?
So, it's something I think about quite a bit, because like we obviously have a team as well, like, and like we're a company, right? Some may say, and it's like, how do you accommodate for the different needs that each team member has? And like, can you become a big company and still be accommodating of the lives that people lead today? And the older, school of thought is that, if you accommodate more on that end, you're accommodating for less, bottom line kind of a thing. That's kind of the way I guess people think. But I think there's something special in like, I've had the same team for the last 3 years, and we've been through so many changes as a business. We didn't start off in this space. Others that have started this 3 years ago. But it's just like, why did the same 6 people stay, right? And when I think about it, I think about like the aligning of an individual's goals and opportunities that they want to pursue, and see where we kind of align with them. I think business owners make the mistake of thinking that people are there for you, but actually you're there to serve them. And for me, it's, for instance, our head of marketing, Susanna, she really loves product management. So I was like, oh, do you want to become chief marketing officer, right? Like, naturally, that's the next step after becoming head of marketing. And she was like, actually, I don't give a shit about that. I want to become a product manager, which in the title sense doesn't make any sense, because it's like, oh, why don't you just want to go like that instead of kind of like this, right? So I think giving them that opportunity, which kind of like their passions and interests sort of align on, is so important. And I think that not enough business owners think about that. In the context of like entrepreneurship, right? What do you really like? What have your lessons kind of been now? Sort of just like, every agent is basically running their own shop in a way. It's dealing with your own clients at 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. at whatever time it might be. Servicing the needs, you're prioritizing what the customer wants, kind of a thing. What have you sort of learned about entrepreneurship from real estate?
I've always kind of been in an entrepreneurial type of space anyway.
Yeah.
Because before real estate, when you're acting and you're going to all these different auditions and you're not getting booked on a job, you're having to find an income elsewhere, right? I think the thing with real estate is everyone needs a home and everyone needs servicing in some kind of way. So if you're not looking to buy something, you may be looking to rent something. If you're not looking to rent something, your friend is, or your cousin is, or, there's always something in your life that I can probably help you with. And I think that's, a really important thing as well, is keeping my network up to the caliber that can help service my clients and what they potentially may need. Because I get asked about wealth management, I get asked about moving, I get asked about insurance, I get asked about so many different types of things outside of real estate. And it's, how can I be as well connected to make sure that I can assist you in the best way possible? Right.
So it's like kind of becoming the community expert almost, so you can service just about any part of the business. Okay, that's interesting. And how do you, so I've seen you do this thing in Battersea where on your stories where you're like going to the markets, like, like, I don't know if it's called a farmer's market here, but like, the equivalent of that. And then you're going to all the local coffee shops and things like that. You're building these unique relationships up with people that you're not selling to at all. Why do you do that? And also, what do you think other people don't understand about becoming a community expert that you have now?
I think the more embedded in your community, naturally, the better that things will always evolve to be. But it just gets to the core of what I believe in. I've said it before, right? I believe in helping people, and then the money will come. So I think if you focus on the right things, you will always have success in that way. I am hopefully looking to move to the area. You know, I educate my daughter in the area. So all things like that naturally embed me around the area in which I specialize in. So it's not just, you know, we're talking about a local school. It's, oh yeah, well, I went to the open day, or, oh yeah, well, my child goes there, or, you know, I have this firsthand experience, which just hits completely differently to I've heard or I've seen or I've researched on Google. When you experience things firsthand, you meet people in an organic way, then the rest will follow.
Right. And, you know, obviously the UK is going through, like, in that sense, like a very interesting time. Like, as much as you have agents that are pushing this kind of content and pushing the like community aspects and everything that's a value proposition about the UK real estate market across different geographies, you do have this new notion of buyers taking longer to close right now, right? People are thinking a lot about sort of their investment choices. They're like, hey, let me see 4 properties. Let me do my rounds a little bit. And I've had this from Anthony Payne at Londres, and like, you know, Jess Bishop, like a bunch of other folks who've come on here basically talking about their deals as well. Do you find that that's the case on your end as well? And also, what do you think is going to be the catalyst to kind of accelerate something like that? Or isn't there a need to accelerate at all?
I think yes and no, right? My market is very interesting because it's very split. So I have all the Power Station and Nine Elms and all the Riverside developments that typically are bought by investors, okay, primarily, or looking for someone who's looking to rent something out, okay? And then in all the areas surrounding Battersea Park is a much more domesticated market. So it's families looking to buy houses or looking to buy apartments that they're going to be sending their children to the local schools, right? So both types of buyers have different things that they're looking for. Your investor or your buyer who's looking to rent something out, you know, they're primarily looking at it at price per square foot, what they're going for in the area. It's very data led, what they've sold for, etc., etc. Whereas your families, you know, they probably want something on that particular road, and therefore the minute that something comes up on that road, it's a no-brainer, they'll be buying it. And then the other bits, the finer tuner bits, they either don't care if they're going to be the most expensive sale on there or purchase on there because they want that road, or, you know, if something isn't right, they will change it because that's going to be more of a forever home. So it really depends on who's buying and what they're motivated by. But yeah, the people are taking a lot longer at the moment to come to a final decision, and I think it's because there's a lot more data out there for them to have access to, so that they can assess the market in a different way to what they're typically used to assessing.
It's interesting that you mentioned data. I think what do you feel about the use of technology in your business today, right? Like, how do you leverage it? Obviously social media is one component of it, but what else do you think you are currently doing and can be doing more of to kind of help you get the data across to your customers and like close deals more efficiently? Because my job, I'm a magic genie, obviously, right? You just say, expecto, give me this CRM, boom, right? Like it happens. My tech team's going to kill me for saying that. But, you know, at the same time, like we are always trying to understand what it is that we could be doing to serve the sort of UK real estate technology kind of market. So what do you think that is for you today?
See, I don't think the UK is techie, if that's a word, enough. And that's because we have been predominantly up until this point led by these bigger corporates, right? So when you empower an individual agent, all of a sudden that agent has power. The bigger corporates don't necessarily like the individual agents to have that power, right? I think that softwares, and they are evolving to, you know, you're running around because successful agents aren't sitting behind desks. You're running around and you're talking into your phone, and that information is going out to that buyer and that information is going here. You know, that's where it needs to get to. And I'm aware it's coming, but it isn't there just yet. And I think that's because of how the UK has been set up.
Right.
But as these brokerages come and become more powerful, I think that's where it's going to also revolutionize how agents are working in the UK.
Very interesting. So, okay. In terms of, I've seen this like little difference in culture, let's just call it, on the use of WhatsApp, right? So in Dubai, we send everything from passport copies all the way through to Emirates ID documents and beyond on WhatsApp, right? Like all of the confidential stuff is on WhatsApp. And that's just, I can see you having a panic attack, right? In the UK, that's not the case. Is WhatsApp like more for, like, it's like a friends and family kind of a situation? Because in Dubai, we have all of the brokerages like using it as a social media platform, like send customer updates, like on like, did you know that prices in Emirates Hills just went up 25%? Would you like to have your property valued, right? Happy birthday, like, because I give a shit about you. Or like, any of these kind of, like that's how far ahead they are on technology, which is usually we're trailing, but like, I feel like for the last, like in terms of social media technology and beyond in real estate, I think that we're very well ahead of the curve on most things. Why is there that? Do you find that WhatsApp is kind of used differently out here than the Middle East in that sense?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have always tried to push WhatsApp, and then the bigger corporates always kind of take it away from you again, right? But it depends who you're dealing with, because when I deal with international clients, 9 times out of 10, everything is on WhatsApp. And then it's as I said, the bigger corporates who pull that away and prefer it to be on email, because then they have access to that email so they can see the dialogue, right? As things are evolving, I do think that it will become more WhatsApp led, but it's weird. We do have this thing in the UK where it's like, my WhatsApp is my personal thing and that's friends and family. I've made my WhatsApp a business WhatsApp, and I think people are scared of their boundaries being broken and people contacting at all types of hours. I think that's why they try to keep things off of WhatsApp.
Again, out in Dubai, we consider it a part of the social media stack. From what I understand, you have started monetizing your social media as well, which most agents will never be able to say. But for some reason, because of like, because you're crazy viral and things like that, I guess, you've been able to monetize your social media and provide yourself yet another stream of income. Do you think that like, social media is distracting for an agent in a way, or and like, how are you thinking about like the future of like, monetization in your social media stack? How are you planning on growing those simultaneously almost?
So this is a funny one, right? Because a lot of people follow me for property, okay? And there's different pockets of different countries where people follow me, and it's through 4 particular properties that they're following me, okay? Influencers will get paid brand deals because of their following and because of the audience in which they have. So why are agents who have a following of a bunch of people who are following them for real estate not getting paid like an influencer to put out property content, right? And it's only where I've left the corporate space that this has really come to light, because I was being approached by developers whilst I was in a corporate space and I couldn't do anything due to contracts. So now I'm out of that. I'm like, okay, this is new. Let's explore this world. And it's, it's very different to developers and brokerages and, real estate companies dealing with an influencer, because I'm actually an agent, right? So they're asking me and I'm doing paid collaborations to do walkthroughs of properties. But when a lead comes through, instead of that being passed through to an office or being passed from the influencer to an office, it's coming directly into an agent who's then able to service them correctly and help them hopefully with a transaction.
I need to get this right. So you're getting paid to walk and you're getting paid to
talk.
To talk. Wow. I'm doing something wrong.
So
I just spend.
At the moment, I've been getting like paid collaborations to do walkthroughs. And then if there's a lead that comes in from that paid collaboration, I will also be gaining a fee. And that fee is, equivalent to what an individual agent would, or an agency would be getting. So it can be a very
significant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see that. And what do you find is, obviously in Dubai I keep saying in Dubai, lol. But if you have an influencer for like these large projects, let's say Bengati, Damak, or Imar, they're like launching like a massive project. They'll call in all these influencers into their room as well, like people with millions of followers, but not necessarily targeted followers. And they're all in there. They're all paid to be there. And they're pushing these developments out on social media. I've not seen that particularly in the UK. Maybe I just haven't followed that, but I haven't seen someone like Ali Abdal or Grace Beverly or something like that, like posting about a property development necessarily. Do you find that then, how do you kind of like price yourself almost, right? Which is a question that a lot of agents would probably have. They're like, okay, this developer is asking to collaborate on this. What do you determine your pricing around?
So I assessed the market and I found out
Diplomatic answer. I assessed the market, she said. Okay.
You always have to assess the market.
Yeah.
I found out what like marketing agencies are charging per video.
Okay.
Or, the bigger accounts, what they would be charging for your property to be featured on that account. And then I looked at their following and I looked at my following and I tried it and it worked.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm going to do that. Assess the market a little bit more. Sian-Louise, this podcast is actually going to be paid. No, but okay. So you've obviously spoken about building a business, building a following, building a brand, and your real estate empire, of course. Talk to me about your favorite quote about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so this is going to be an absolute paraphrase, right?
Yeah.
But Steve Jobs said something, and again, I don't know why I keep going down the morbid avenues, but this is clearly how I navigate my life, right? He said something around, if today was your last day, how would you live your day? And I was speaking to one of my friends who's hugely successful, and he has this thing where he like looks to the North Star. Okay, so say you want to build a business, you look at the North Star where you've taken over the whole world. Okay, let's work it back. How do you get to that point, right? Whereas I had a conversation with him where he was like, I looked at my life, and he was like, the North Star was my funeral, right? And he's like, so if I'm there and I'm on that day and I build it back, what do I want to have achieved in my life? And what do I want people, quite frankly, to say about me? So that's kind of how I see it. It's like, okay, well, if that's the inevitable thing that's going to happen to us all, when we're there, what do I want to have achieved in between that time? And then what do I need to do in order to have people say the things I want them to say about me when it's that day?
Wow.
I'm giving you intenseness.
No, I mean, it's like, it's things that I, like, due to recent life events, I have thought a lot about these topics, and like, when you think about it like that, it is a very meaningful way to live life, right? Like, that's a tough one. I'm not going to get into it because it's a whole other podcast. Probably very depressing to watch as well. So, but my final question to you then is, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Just to keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going, keep going, keep going. Even if you make a small step forward, it's a step forward. And what my life is at 21 is completely different to what it is at the age I am now.
Yeah, okay.
See that?
Yeah, I see that. Okay.
But I'm not, it's just completely different. I would have never have expected it, but you just have to keep going, keep pushing forward.
Well, Sian-Louise, it's been a pleasure as always. I'm super grateful to have you on the podcast and also in my life. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And that's been this week's episode of The Real Ones. Come back next week for yet another phenomenal guest. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, and see you in the next one.